Can you hear me all right, Phil?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Andy. So over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me along today. It's really great to be here. What I'd like to do today is a little bit different. I'd like to share with you an emergent framework for engagement that's perhaps come out of some discussions at Portsmouth. So it's a bit selfish today to try and get some feedback in terms of whether you think it resonates with your own experiences. So I'd like to share that framework. I'd like to talk to you about the typologies in that framework, and then show how we've responded to some of the things that come out of that framework in terms of helping staff to transition. So I think we can all agree with the last year has been a massive sea change in terms of how we deliver online. And I've been doing flexible and active blended learning since 1992. My first job was a flexible learning facilitator at the University of Gloucestershire, and I've always told people that, active blended learning is a bit of a spectrum from face-to-face to fully online delivery. And what's happened in the last year is that we've definitely gone to the right-hand side of that diagram. But what we've discovered, or what I've seen at Portsmouth talking to lots of staff, is that the transition and that level of engagement between different staff is incredibly varied from people. And if you link it to the innovation literature, then we've got the non-adopters and we've got the early adopters and so on at the end. And we've sat there and thought, well, what's causing this level of contrast we're seeing? What's actually influencing that level of engagement? Is there any link to innovation cycles and diffusion? And for us, understanding that individual engagement and how we frame conversations and motivate people to engage has been quite critical in some of the things that we've actually been doing. So what we've come up, and this is why I've called it a bit of a motorway analogy, is a slight take on the innovation literature, perhaps making it a little bit more accessible for perhaps colleagues. So who's this model for, particularly the Act Dev teams and TAIL teams and our online course developers, to help picture where our staff are at? And this jokingly came out of a conversation, and I used it, and I love a good analogy, and I put this in a meeting, and a lot of colleagues said, yeah, we're seeing that, Andy, that makes sense. And I've kind of like floated at different meetings, and the feedback I seem to be getting is we're seeing exactly the same thing. So we've come up with this kind of like motorway analogy, and we've got 4 kind of like user groups within it, but it's based on conversations. So at the moment it's quite anecdotal. I want to take it forward to see if we can develop a methodology to make it a little bit more robust, but for us it's really helped capture where we think certain colleagues are on the journey. So what I'd like to do is take you through the different typologies and then show the kind of like how we've responded to that, and then see if it resonates with your own experience. So we have our outside laners. Now you might see these as the early adopters and the specialists, but these are colleagues that we've seen that have been highly competent, high levels of pedagogic and digital literacy, and they've gone, they've grasped it, they've adapted really quickly, and they've driven off into the distance and are getting on with it really confidently. Now, the challenge we think is that often that expertise gets out of sight. We're not being able to draw on it because they are so far ahead. Equally, are these staff posing a problem because they're doing some fantastic stuff and raising the expectation of students that other staff can't meet? So the success is actually creating problems in terms of some staff look at it and go, I can't get there, and students say, I want that. My friend's getting that. Why can't we have that same level of engagement around the technologies? We have the staff in the middle lane who are working incredibly consistency, and they're embracing the principles of online delivery, obeying the speed limit. We can see their practice, perhaps occasionally moving into the outside lane to try something different and moving back. The challenge is, though, what it's like on the inside lane is that you don't put your foot on the accelerator. You get caught in the contraflow or the 50-mile-an-hour zone, not really challenging their own practice, not prepared to come out into the outside lane a little bit to develop more particular skills to go forward. And potentially as a result, other people are perhaps getting stuck kind of like behind them. We have our inside laners, and these are our colleagues that are slow to start but are getting there, and they're building up the confidence and getting up to speed, perhaps coming into the middle lane at some point. But the danger is they're traveling too slowly and not getting up to speed quickly enough, therefore having a bit of an impact on the long-term student experience. And of course, if they're not enjoying the journey and they're sitting on the inside lane, they're going to be able to get off at the next exit and disengage and become disenfranchised from the transition process that we're trying to engage them in. And of course, I think our biggest problem, and we've certainly seen this in a number of staff, is that we've got staff that haven't even started yet. They're perhaps still in the car, or they're sitting on the motorway bridge looking at the motorway going, do I really want to go on that? And we're trying to get our heads around this, and it's a lot to do with the lack of engagement, overwhelmed by the quality information and the technologies that are out there. So where we've ended up with that is some kind of like ideas, and the kind of that's certainly for me thought about the thinking when we've done things is perhaps turning the outside laners around so they come back and support those that haven't left yet. Getting the outside laners to program the GPS in the car for those people that haven't got in the car yet to explain the journey that they're about to go on, and create these spaces at service stations for conversations. Or how's, you know, the outside laners stopping and getting off and the other people catching. Well, how's your journey been so far? Well, if you keep going and you do this, you do that, be fine. So creating these collaborative spaces where people feel engaged because we are sharing practice to encourage them to get on the journey. But also the journey planner, clear communication and signposting, so that staff can plan effectively for the journey ahead, knowing that they have an available recovery service, if you like. So our academic development teams and our tail colleagues, very much like the RAC, the AA, Green Flag kind of organisations, that we are there to help. But actually, we can come in and we can help service your modules to help make sure you transition across, and so on and so forth. So again, you can see it's got some legs, but it seems to be resonating with colleagues when we go out, not just at Portsmouth, but actually beyond. So what have we done to support that? So we've had lots of conversations. The question I was having some colleagues yesterday in preparation for today was, what lane do you think staff should travel in? Or is it should be that we just have people in different lanes and they're moving between lanes, but perhaps that we need to come down to inside outside so people have started, and try and make sure that we've got fewer people who haven't started yet. So again, if anybody's got any ideas of that, please put it in the chat. So what have we done? So if we use the motorway analogy, lots of signposting, the creation of lots of really engaging resources. I've just shared the link to the re-engage one in the website, but just to really give staff the confidence to get going with a whole variety of different online materials to showcase what they can actually do. We started off last year by creating a lot of Moodle-based resources, asynchronous resources that staff could actually work through, and that's proved really successful. What we've also tried to do in many ways is try and guide colleagues through this plethora. This is, for me, where we're often at, that staff, we talk to staff about the types of things that they can do, and they see this plethora of ingredients that they can go and play with. And this, for a lot of people, is incredibly intimidating, and is one of the reasons why they don't start, because they just don't know what to pick. So at Portsmouth, what we've done is really narrowed that down, making Moodle the central hub of what we do. We have Nearpod and we have Vivox. And I think this year, the real find has been Padlet in terms of that kind of like engagement. So we tend to focus our kind of like diet around these three, but not really clipping people's wings too much. So if they want to use other things around that, they can. This is something that some colleagues at Portsmouth are working on at the moment. It's called Explore. And again, it represents our visual approach to engagement. And basically, you click on one of the links and it takes you through to a really nice overview of that piece of software, what you can actually use it for. And it draws on, in the media section, some of the activities and content from some of the other events that we've actually been during the course of the year. So it's really that early signposting. The other thing we've done to create these collaborative spaces is create a mini fest series. We had one on Monday, and this gives those kind of like outside laners the opportunity to come back and talk about the kind of things that they've been doing and share that practice. But equally, we open it to everybody. So if you've just put your foot in the water and had a go, this is the opportunity for you to come and share that practice and gain more experience and confidence, and to share the stuff and the work that you've actually been doing.
You've got a minute left, Andy.
Yeah, where to go next? Well, actually, you know, it's seeing if this has resonance, trying to develop the profiles a little bit more and really get to grips with the kind of key characteristics of those groups. and to develop a methodology that fits around that, and to see if we can actually tie it into the diffusion cycle. I think it's interesting. I'm interesting to see, because the diffusion cycle and product development kind of like tracks over time. Of course, the impact of COVID is it's been now. There hasn't been time to get in. It's kind of like it's been such an impact on the system that people have had to respond very, very quickly indeed to the transition. And I'm just wondering whether in that kind of instance, the adopter and the timeframes and diffusion cycles actually still fit, or do we need to look at it in another way? So like I said, it's a very selfish opportunity to get some feedback, to see if you'll resonate, see if these kind of situation is resonating with your own practice. So any feedback would be really welcome. And there you go. Thanks very much.
Andy, I love it. That was so good. Thank you. Let me just put your webcam on full so we can see your. A lot of people have really liked the analogies that you've used there. So I think it's gone down really well, which is great to see. I'm going to be a bit selfish here, and I'm going to ask a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
We do have a lot, so if you could jump in the chat afterwards, that would be great.
I can do.
So on one part, you said that you help your academics service their modules, I guess, like the AA or RAC and stuff like that. I think that's really cool. I like that. But how far do you go with this? I mean, do you have like a limit on what you're going to do for people, or is it just a kind of, you know, how?
Well, I can say we've created lots of websites to guide them through, and that information provision has been really important. We're a small act dev team, and we each liaise with a particular subject area, and we go out and do consultancy. So we talked about kind of like the motorway analogy. One of the things that we've come up with is called a module MOT. We developed this with marketing colleagues, and basically it's like the car dashboard health, and we actually work with them. And the idea is that you can put any elements into the MOT framework that you want to check, but then it provides the basis of that discussion point, and it's very much a team-based kind of like approach, and that's something we've been very conscious of. One of the things I didn't show is that all this has been driven by the university's principle around blended and connected learning, and it's been lovely to see Diana here today, because the ABC stuff for design has been so instrumental into the stuff that we've actually designed. Sorry, you can hear my doorbell ringing.
That's okay. So I had another question as well, if that's okay, and then I'm going to just go on to the chat if we have time. So when it says, you know, you have your outside laners and you ask them to come back to kind of share examples of what they found that works really well. That's something which we obviously really like, and that was kind of something that kind of spurred us to start this webinar series in the first place. But do you ever feel that you have to ask any of these outside laners to slow down, or do you kind of put a speed limit on them?
Well, we haven't got there yet, Phil. But when I in other institutions, that is the question. I'm very uncomfortable with asking people to slow down, because I don't really want to trim and clip people's enthusiasm, because I think that's the wrong way of doing it. And I think you need those adopters that are going out there to push the boundaries of the technologies. But I think what we need to make sure is we give everybody that's doing that the opportunity to come back and share that practice. So people can actually see that we need those people to, you know, we need the early pioneers, you know, to go and find the Americas and to go and push the boundaries of the new technology to show what we can do and what works and what doesn't work. And it's about, but also then allowing them to report back and come back and talk to colleagues about the kind of things that we've been doing. And our mini fest series, which started last year with a really big kind of like blended and learning festival, has really done that. And we run the mini fest every couple of months. And we started off with Act Dev running those sessions. It was the Act Dev team talking about different technologies and the pedagogy and so on. And what we've tried to do over the course of the mini fest is to take a step backwards. So it's actually a mini fest that's not run by Act Dev and TEL. It's actually supported by colleagues from different faculties coming in and sharing their practice. And we're finding it's staff are really appreciating the opportunity to share, particularly the outside laners, but even colleagues, and we deliberately kind of like invite those colleagues that we know have just started to come and share their practice, to give them the the confidence and the encouragement that what they're doing is absolutely fantastic and carry on. And then it helps those, because if you think about it, everybody, if you're on the inside lane, everybody's an outside laner. If you haven't got in the car yet, the person on the inside lane is an outside laner. If you're in the inside lane, the person's on the right. So it's about just working collectively together. And that comes back to the ultimate question of what lane should people be in? Or is it that we have people flowing in different lanes, but we have opportunities where they can come off and get back on again and give a lift to those people that haven't started, and we can stop at different points and so on. So yeah, this is where I want to develop a little bit more. And I'm delighted to hear it's resonating, because it really did start as a bit of a flippant statement in a meeting. And I went away and went, actually, that makes sense. And we've just kind of like refined it and built onto it. So we're going to see if we can take it a bit further.
Fantastic. And again, I think we could talk about this for another couple of hours, but I'm afraid we're going to have to move on. So if you could jump into the chat for us and have a look at all of the questions, that would be really fantastic. Thank you.
No worries.